Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this lesson. In this lesson, I'm going to teach you about paradox. Now, before we begin the lesson, I would like to point out that this is part 4. I have already uploaded parts 1, part 2, and part 3. So if you want to know more about the literary techniques that I have already covered, feel free to have a look at those videos. There is actually a playlist on literary techniques. Now, before I begin the lesson, I would like to point out that literary techniques are also called stylistic devices. Now, you may need to know stylistic devices or literary techniques for the purposes of commentary writing or any form of text analysis, maybe poetry. Or maybe you just want to familiarize yourself with all these literary techniques just to develop your language skills. Now, a paradox. What is a paradox? A paradox refers to contradicting concepts or ideas. A paradox refers to contradicting concepts or ideas. What do we mean? When you have ideas that are contradicting each other, so they are kind of contrary to each other, they are the opposite of each other. But remember, they are concepts or ideas, okay? Now, in my previous lesson, I talked about oxymorons. I talked about oxymorons in part 3 when we were looking at literary techniques. And you may be asking yourself at this point, so what is the difference between a paradox and oxymoron? Remember we said that an oxymoron is when you place words that are opposite in meaning, words, not concepts or ideas, but words that are opposite in meaning, you place them side by side. Like bitter, sweet. That is an oxymoron. But a paradox is when you have contradicting concepts, okay? Not words, contradicting concepts or ideas. Now, let us look at some examples and hopefully that will clarify everything for you. Example 1. All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. You're probably familiar with that quote from George Orwell's Animal Farm. All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. Now, this is a paradox because we have two ideas that are being contradicted, okay? And that is the concept of equality. If you're familiar with George Orwell's Animal Farm, it is a text that one of the themes of the text is politics, okay? So, this quote, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others, contradicts the concept of equality as we know it. Because as we know it, equality means that everybody is the same. Okay, that everybody is the same. No one has more rights than the other person. All of us are the same. That is how we understand equality. But in this quote, the concept of equality is a paradox because although they all are animals, some of them are more equal than others. And that means that equality has different interpretations, meaning that in this case, equality is not really equality because some animals have more rights or privileges than others. Okay, so in this case, the concept of equality is a paradox. It is paradoxical that despite the fact that they all are animals, some are more equal than others, meaning that some get better treatment, they get preferential treatment, they have more rights than the others. That is paradoxical. Okay? Now, in this example, you may ask yourself, so what is the use? Why do writers use paradox? Why did George Orwell decide to use this paradox in his novel Animal Farm? Now, paradox is often used or employed by writers or poets, for example, to accentuate or to underscore a specific tone. Okay? Sometimes it is also used to accentuate or underscore a specific theme. Like, for example, this particular quote, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. Through this quote, a tone of irony is projected. It is ironical that all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. The irony is that you expect that all animals should be treated the same, but in this case, some of them have more rights than the others. So it is ironical. So through this quote, which is a paradox, we can also infer that tone of irony. It is ironical. Okay? Remember, as I said in my previous video on oxymorons, it is not enough for you to just identify a paradox from a poem or any text that you're studying. It is not enough. If you're writing a commentary, it is not enough to identify a line and say, okay, we have a paradox here. You have to go straight ahead and explain the effect. What is achieved by the writer through the use of that paradox? And in this case, we have that ironical tone that is projected through this paradox. But also this line, this quote, underpins a theme. This particular line underpins a theme. It projects a theme. It underscores a theme. And that is the theme of inequality. So in other words, when you have to identify literary techniques, try and explain the effects, try and explain the meaning of those literary techniques within the concept of the text that you're analyzing. Let us move on to example 2. I must be cruel to be kind. I must be cruel to be kind. Now that is a quote from Shakespeare's Hamlet. You're probably familiar with it. Now, I must be cruel to be kind. What you see there is contradicting ideas. The idea of kindness and the idea of cruelty, okay? They are being contradicted. I must be cruel to be kind. How can you be cruel and through your cruelty you're kind? How can you be cruel and be kind at the same time? So these words are actually spoken by Shakespeare, not Shakespeare, but by Hamlet. And he speaks these words to his mother, Queen Gertrude, okay? Now, when Hamlet tells these words to his mother, basically he is trying to explain the fact that he intends to avenge or to revenge his father's death. by killing King Claudius, okay? So he wants to revenge for his father's killing by the current king, that is King Claudius, who is actually, as you may know, the brother. In other words, King Claudius is his uncle. But his uncle has now married his mother. Now, so Hamlet says he intends to revenge his father's death by killing Claudius, because to him this will be an act of kindness to his mother. So by killing Claudius, he will be carrying out an act of kindness to his mother, okay? Because obviously he does not want his mother to continue being married to King Claudius. And that's not all. He feels that King Claudius, because remember, if you're familiar with the book, King Claudius killed Hamlet's father, and the ghost of Hamlet's father revealed to Hamlet that King Claudius had killed him, and the ghost asked Hamlet to avenge for his death. So by killing Claudius, he will be actually carrying out an act of kindness, not just to his mother, but also to his late father. Okay? Now, the question is, what is the effect of using this paradox in this line? I must be cruel to be kind. Now, this particular line projects a theme. There is a theme that is projected through this line. I must be cruel to be kind. And that is the theme of, you could say, the theme of family love, family loyalty. But also you have the theme of revenge, okay? But also there is the theme of discord, because we get an impression that things are not right. You know, the theme of injustice, we get the impression that things are not right. And that's why Hamlet feels that through killing Claudius, although his act will be very cruel, it will be actually an act of kindness. And actually then, this is also quite ironical. Number 3, the child is the father of the man. The child is the father of the man. Now, this is a line from the poem My Heart Leaps When I Behold by William Wordsworth. Okay? The child is the father of the man. Now, you're probably wondering, how can a child be the father of the man? Shouldn't it be the other way around? Now, we have two ideas here. We have two concepts, two ideas that are being contradicted. And that is the idea of childhood and the idea of manhood. Okay? Now, what this actually means is that the childhood of a person, the childhood of a person shapes his life, and consequently fathers or creates the grown-up adult as childhood experiences lead to maturity. So for you to experience manhood, for you to become a man, you must experience childhood. You can't be born a fully grown man. You're born as a child, and then you go through life's experiences. And then as you go through life's experiences, you become a grown-up adult. So in other words, childhood experiences lead to maturity. They lead to manhood. Okay? That is the meaning of this line. So once again, you have the tone of a very ironical tone that is underpinned or underscored through the use of this paradox. The child is the father of the man. Okay? And probably you could say there is probably the theme of manhood in this poem, My Heart Leaps When I Behold. Because remember, you have to always analyze the effect of a particular stylistic device, like for example, paradox, within the context of the text that you're studying. Let's move on to example 4. What is her barren grave? That is rainbow in her womb. What is her barren grave? That is rainbow in her womb. So here you have a paradox, because on one hand you're talking about a grave, and then you're also talking about a womb. Now, we relate, one connects with the idea of life, and the other one we connect it to the idea of death. And that's why we're talking about paradox here, because we have contradicting concepts or ideas, the idea of life and the idea of death. Okay, so the contradictory ideas of the earth, okay, being the birthplace and a graveyard, makes these lines paradoxical. Okay, the contradictory ideas of the earth being the birthplace and a graveyard at the same time makes these lines quite paradoxical. What is her barren grave? That is rainbow in her womb. Okay, so you have the earth here being associated or seen as a birthplace, but at the same time as a graveyard. And therefore, we can talk about the idea of paradox, the contradicting concepts or ideas of life when we're talking about the birthplace, because we're talking about a womb, and then we're talking about the idea of death, because we're talking about a graveyard. We have these two contradicting concepts, and that's why we're talking about a paradox. Okay? Now, I hope that you found this lesson useful. I hope you now understand what paradox is. I hope you understand the difference between a paradox and oxymoron. If you watch the previous video on oxymorons, then you know that we said that an oxymoron is where you have words that are opposite in meaning being placed side by side. Like, for example, bitter, sweet. Remember, those are words. But a paradox refers to contradicting concepts or ideas. So we're talking with oxymorons, we are talking about words. But with paradox, we are talking about contradicting concepts or ideas. Okay? And remember, always, it's not enough to identify the literary technique. Yes, it is fantastic. It's brilliant. But you need to go right ahead and explain the effect that is achieved through that particular literary technique within the larger context of the text that you're analyzing, be it a poem, a novel, or maybe a play, or any other type of text. If you have any questions, feel free to interact with me in the comment section. I will be more than happy to help you as much as I can. Thank you very much for watching this lesson, and I hope to see you in our next lesson on literary techniques part 5. Bye bye.